Welcome to Fire Your Doctor with your host, Dr. Danielle Lockwood.
And Richard Lockwood, your guest
A guest in resident.
in resident. Yes. Welcome. We're
This is
episode
42?
43.
43.
Yes, 43.
Oh, cool.
We're actually going to talk about why natural medicine was pushed aside and the hidden history of modern medicine today. So I'm excited about that. For anybody who is a history nerd like me, you're going to like this episode. This is actually based on a class that I took as an elective in medical school. And I think it's relevant based on what we talked about in our last episode. We talked about the integration of the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit. Yes, there are 4 parts. And when those layers are aligned, health often follows. But this raises a very important question. If human health is this complex and interconnected, why does the modern medical system treat the body in such a narrow way? Why is medicine, what's that?
To make it easier.
To make it easier, yeah. Why is medicine so focused on symptom suppression, pharmaceuticals, isolated organ systems, instead of understanding the body as a whole? We got to go backwards to go forwards, because I just interviewed my 90-year-old grandma yesterday, and she said, "You got to know history, love. It repeats itself." And I was like, "Great word of advice, Grants. Love it." So here we are. We're going to talk about that history. There's something I was thinking of. You were saying, when I was saying that, you said something and it made me think of something, but now I can't remember.
There's way too many indefinite articles.
Way too much.
There's something and something and something.
Okay. All right.
What did you say?
Okay. Let's move on. Medicine was not always practiced this way. If we go back a little over 100 years, medicine in the United States looked very different. Okay. There were multiple competing medical traditions, including allopathic medicine, which has basically what has become conventional medicine. They had homeopathy, they had naturopathy, they had eclectic medicine, they had osteopathy, they had botanical herbal medicine, and patients would often choose between these systems. And so many physicians were trained in multiple approaches to healing. Most of these traditions shared a core belief. That belief was the body possesses an inherent ability to heal itself. And the physician's job was to remove the obstacles to healing, support the body's natural processes, and restore balance. The philosophy later became one of the core principles of naturopathic medicine, which is called vis medicatrix naturae, the healing power of nature. Okay, so that's a little background. And the we'll go into that. Naturopathic medical schools almost completely disappeared. They were able to save a few, and for a while they were gone, and then they became part of a chiropractic school, and then they got kicked out of the chiropractic school, and then they ended up with the school in the 50s, which is the school that I attended in Portland, Oregon. And that was, I think, 1956 it was established. So it's been around a while, but before that, we had a lot of different schools to choose from. So let's talk about homeopathy. So homeopathy is a system. It's been around well over 200 years at this point. It was invented by a German physician, and his name was Samuel Hahnemann, which I'll talk about in a second. And he was actually an MD, very smart. I don't know if I talk about Hahnemann later in here, but I'll just give you a brief on Hahnemann. He spoke like 8 languages. He was a traditionally trained physician. One of our medical schools, the current medical schools, used to be named Hahnemann Medical College, and it's located in Pennsylvania, and it's now Drexel University College of Medicine, which is actually interesting. The undergrads that my dad went to, my stepdad, he went to Drexel. But yeah, it used to be called Hahnemann, and it was named after the father of homeopathy. And his idea was to take substances, it could be a plant, a mineral, or a tissue extract, and give it at such a low dose as to not be harmful, but to teach the body how to heal. So almost giving it like a little program so that it knows what to do, and he treated by the law of similars. So for example, one example to use would be if you overdosed on the plant, the homeopathic Rhus toxicandrum, which is poison ivy. If you actually took or got access to that plant, it would cause vesicular swelling on one side of the body and itching and redness and all of that. And so it's a wonderful remedy to treat skin issues that match that same symptom pattern. So that would be an example of a remedy to use. But instead of using the whole plant, which would cause an illness, you would actually use a very, very, very small, in fact, there's nothing really left in it. The only way that we know that there's something in a homeopathic remedy is we actually can do mass spec on it, and we can see that there's a different light spectrometry based on that particular remedy, but they're very safe. They've been used for hundreds of years on pregnant women, on dogs, cats, babies, everyone. So very, very safe. And the United States actually has by the late 1800s, the United States had over 100 homeopathic hospitals. And then there were more than 20 homeopathic medical schools, and thousands of physicians practiced homeopathy. And so homeopathic physicians often competed directly with conventional doctors and were widely respected. And like I said, there was a medical college called Hahnemann Medical College in Pennsylvania, and the docs learned all the modern medicine stuff and homeopathy at that college. Interesting fact, one of our first librarians, or I guess not one of our first, but within the last 20 or 30 years, librarian at this medical college I graduated from, actually heard once they were changing the name to Drexel University College of Medicine, they were getting rid of first edition homeopathic texts. So he took a plane and went basically dumpster diving to rescue these books that were from the 1800s on herbs and homeopathy, and they're now in the library at NUNM, which is pretty cool. I've read them. You have to wear gloves when you read them.
Should have put them on eBay.
Should have put them on eBay. Probably not.
I'm
So
just thinking,
that being said, right here, I have a first edition Linmar cookbook, which we'll talk about in a second. He's one of the first prominent naturopathic physicians in the country. So then we have the influence of the Rockefellers. Okay, so one of the most powerful economic figures of the early 20th century, John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil. Rockefeller eventually became one of the wealthiest men in history, though the Rockefeller Foundation and the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research, he began investigating heavily in medical education and scientific research, and these investments helped expand laboratory science and pharmaceutical development. Interestingly enough, I don't know if it's in here, but one of the byproducts of producing oil is petroleum. Is that correct?
That's the product.
It's the product.
Yeah. You might be there's a lot. Petroleum would be an umbrella term for anything virtually that would be derived from oil.
Correct. So
it wouldn't be a byproduct. It would be
there's
the product.
jelly, right? And there's petroleum. Anyway, the backbone of a lot of these pharmaceutical drugs was petroleum based.
Sure.
So he was actually set to partner with the pharmaceutical industry to create products that contain petroleum in them.
Yes.
Okay. And then basically, once they had influence financially in the medical education, they moved a model that was centered more towards pharmaceutical chemistry, laboratory research, and hospital-based medicine, and patentable drug treatments. So schools teaching things like natural therapies, nutrition, herbal medicine, hydrotherapy often struggled to receive similar funding.
So wait a minute. Let's just put wrap more of a bow around this. What you're saying is that 20th century Rockefeller, Standard Oil, which was maybe one of the modern world's first industrial giants, right? He creates this oil company that is the biggest company in the United States, maybe even the world. And he is using these chemical processes to make fossil fuels or to, what do you call it? Refine fossil fuels. And that kind of opens up this world of kind of chemistry and things like that. They're making gasoline, diesel, petroleum oils and stuff like that. But also what they find within these processes is they're getting things like our friend petroleum jelly or like Vaseline. So they're getting Vaseline. And then from there with these chemical processes that they're making fuel, they're also able to derive pharmaceutical medications. Once they're deriving pharmaceutical medications and they realize that this is another profit center, it's like, okay, now we can take oil money and this kind of chemistry, industrial and pharmaceutical money and roll it into basically increasing influence in higher education, in schools that are teaching medicine, and in the hospital system.
Yep. Good. That was a good bow.
Okay. Yeah.
This is a quote.
Yeah. Which is kind of with Standard Oil's model of like come in,
Yep.
take over a market, create a monopoly, starve out the competition.
Yeah. In fact, one of the quotes that Rockefeller was quoted as saying is competition is a sin. So this reflected his philosophy of consolidating industries into centralized systems.
Right.
Okay.
And so you're arguing that we still haven't dealt with maybe the effectiveness of homeopathy compared to naturopathy, compared to Western medicine or anything. But what you have, I think, at least decently established so far, is that there were a lot of financial interests and incentives stacked up on the side of pharmaceuticals that would not have been on the side of other competing medical systems.
Right. And the fact that it started to influence and penetrate into how the schools were teaching, then doctors lost the art of being able to know how to effectively prescribe with those things too, just because they weren't patentable.
Yeah, it's created a conflict of interest where all of a sudden we've got billionaires getting into medicine.
Correct.
Okay, sure.
And then, of course, we have the Flexner Report. So, this is one of the most influential moments in the transition of going from we have options in natural medicine to the more allopathic is the only option. And that was the Flexner Report of 1910. It was funded by the Carnegie Foundation and supported by the Rockefeller philanthropic funding.
Well, yeah, Carnegie was another one of those
Steel.
business
right?
tycoons and metals. Yeah,
Yeah,
mainly
he's a
known for the steel and iron refineries,
So, Abraham
smelting.
Flexner was actually a French guy. He evaluated and he went around, funded by the Carnegie and the Rockefeller people, and he went and evaluated 150 medical schools in the United States and Canada. His report recommended major reforms that emphasized laboratory-based scientific medicine, pharmaceutical science, and hospital-based training. Sounds great. While the report improved certain educational standards, it also resulted in the closure of many schools that practiced naturopathy, homeopathy, botanical medicine, eclectic medicine, and within a few decades, the diversity of medical systems in the United States had largely disappeared.
Okay. So there, what you're saying is that a very influential report that was used to make government policy decisions that probably hadn't even been made before. So it's like there's a whole rabbit trail there. But what you're saying is that industry money in the form of Carnegie and Rockefeller ended up funding the research that would ultimately recommend what our legal governing system of medicine followed.
Yes, and then weird, they're recommending the things that they're funding and not necessarily the things that were unpatented.
So we see this like kind of two-pronged attack, if you will, in that on the one hand, they're making a fortune on this stuff, whereas other things wouldn't be. And then they're kind of trying to fund and push schools in that direction. And then they're also recruiting government to make policy that would benefit pharmaceutical.
Correct. And so before the Flexner reforms, the United States had 150 medical schools that represented a wide variety of medical philosophies. After the reforms, many of those institutions closed. Some of the most heavily affected schools were those serving women and Black physicians, actually. At the time, there were 7 medical schools training Black physicians. After that report, 2 remained. Okay. And those are Howard University, which still exists, and then Meharry Medical College, I don't think exists anymore. 5 others closed. This dramatically reduced opportunities for Black physicians during that era. So also, these were schools that were willing to train, at that time, a minority of people, women and Blacks, right? And then, of course, during that same period of time, we see the rise of the American Medical Association, the AMA. This became increasingly influential in shaping the medical practice and the public perception. One of the most powerful figures within the AMA during the earliest 20th century was Dr. Morris Fishbein. I think that's how you say it. Fishbein?
Pine.
Bein? Okay, great. I said it
Auf
right.
Deutsch.
Auf Deutsch. Editor of the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, which is one of the premier medical journals that still exists today. He was the general manager of the AMA, and he was the public voice of organized medicine. He held enormous influence between the 90s and 40s, and Fishbein actually launched numerous public campaigns warning against what he called medical. So this was actually when that terminology started to come to the forefront. Many of the systems he targeted included chiropractic, naturopathy, homeopathy, and herbal medicine. Because JAMA carried tremendous authority, these campaigns strongly shaped public perception. And then over time, the AMA's growing control became over licensing, education, and professional standards helped solidify allopathic medicine as the dominant model in the United States. Medical historian Harris Coulter, I like how he's a historian and his last name's Coulter. It's kind of funny. He wrote, quote, "The struggle between homeopathy and allopathy was one of the most intense professional conflicts in American history." End quote.
I don't think you really landed the plane on Fishbein.
Yeah.
You just said that he kind of just didn't like
Yeah.
homeopathy. Like who was he?
He was a businessman, and
Was he a doctor as well?
he was a doctor. He went to one of the medical schools where you could get a doctor in about 2 weeks through the mail, but he was a very
I got one on the
savvy,
internet.
yeah, he was a very savvy business person, and he was receiving funding from someone. We don't know who, but he would take people out golfing, and he would take them out, and he really started that very good, like it was almost like the early lobbyist kind of way of things, of schmoozing doctors and giving them kickbacks on different things. And I'll publish your article in the American Medical Association. He really built up the association. I believe, don't quote me on this, but he actually ended up getting kicked out of the association later on for fraud and for embezzling money out of the association.
Yeah, I remember we dealt with this in the book with JAMA in the book a little bit, but there was some kind of key details that were related to corruption and less than arm's length kind of relationships between pharmacy, university hospitals, and just that kind of money relationship.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think we definitely
But
covered that more in the
I
book.
know, I mean, yeah, I just feel like it's important to put a pin in that because otherwise you're just kind of telling about this guy that started JAMA and he just didn't like this stuff.
He
Anyway.
didn't like it, but there was actually a couple of, in the history class that I took, they showed a couple articles of people advocating for natural medicine, and that actually most people during that time preferred to see a natural doctor overseeing the allopathic doctors, because at that point they were using things like,
Who's they?
the allopathics were using drugs that were harmful. They were using too high doses of radiation. They were starting to experiment with things, early chemotherapy, things like that, and they were just killing people. So nobody really wanted to see them anyway, but they had a very good PR campaign, and Fishbein was actually part of that campaign. He was very charismatic, he was a salesman really. And so he was central in getting the AMA off the ground.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to go backwards. We're going to talk about one of my favorite, he's a priest actually, Father Sebastian Kneipp. Another, how do you say that? Auf Deutsch? Kneipp? You say the K? You don't say the K.
You don't say that.
Kneipp and natural healing. But while he was from Germany, American medicine was moving toward pharmaceutical medicine. Europe still maintained very strong traditions of natural healing. One influential figure was Father Kneipp, a Bavarian priest in the 19th century. Kneipp actually developed a natural healing system centered around hydrotherapy, which are water treatments, kind of making a comeback with the cold plunge and the sauna and all those types of things. He used herbal medicine, he used nutrition, exercised, a balanced lifestyle. His ideas became extremely popular throughout Europe, and he set up health resorts and They were called sanatoriums, and they were built where patients would come and recover. They would walk in the fresh air. They would get sunlight. They would get water treatments, whole foods, rest, gentle movement. And these healing centers often resembled like peaceful retreat environments designed to restore health naturally. Some of them were kind of extreme. Like some of the old photos, they'd be like standing there in their underwear getting sprayed with like a hose of like wet water. Like,
Sounds very German.
yeah, it was just like they had to create that contrast of the hot and the cold, but people would go there to heal from tuberculosis. They would go to hear the stories are amazing, healing from a guy who got ran over by a donkey cart, like,
I hate when that
and
happens.
just crushed bones. But yeah, over time, they healed them with water therapy, nutrition, light, all of those things. But what's interesting is what happened to the sanatoriums. Some of these were beautiful, lush acreage,
Where you get sprayed with a hose?
where you get sprayed with a hose and you get to go walk in the dewy morning.
In the
Several
mist?
in the mist.
Not in the midst.
We were in the midst of God though,
I
as well.
suppose.
We were.
We always are, though.
Yeah. Several factors contributed to the decline of the sanatoriums. One, the rise of pharmaceutical medicine, the expansion of hospital-based healthcare, insurance systems favoring procedures and drugs, cultural shifts towards faster medical interventions. These were slow. Sometimes people would have to go stay there for like a month or two to heal. Many of the former sanatorium properties were eventually converted into hotels and resorts, but a lot of them were actually converted to mental insane asylums too.
Nice.
And that's where, when you hear sanatorium, it just is like a horror movie.
And a Metallica song.
I guess. Yeah. So that slower philosophy of restorative healing gradually faded and then switched into this, well, we can kill you quicker. I mean, I don't know what.
Well, I think it's just part of when we look at the whole push of the Industrial Revolution and then the World Wars and all of that, and the Federal Reserve, which came in just right after, right around that same time. It's almost like this just whole beast system just started.
Here's what I found out recently. I don't know if this is true, but I think it's true, is a lot of the people who were set to vote against the Federal Reserve were killed on the Titanic.
Wow.
I don't know. Somebody confirm if you know, but I find that interesting.
Yeah.
There's a free trip on the new Titanic boat.
Yeah, it's a giant sanatorium.
Yeah,
That's gonna...
I heard they're trying to make another Titanic boat.
That's a great idea.
I'm not going to ride on that boat.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
No, gracias.
No, well, I think it's just we're going towards that push where you look at the Industrial Revolution and the effects on everything from education to healthcare to our financial system, locking us into essentially just greater and greater dependence on fiat currency and debt. And all of a sudden, you're in this place where, okay, somebody doesn't have like a month. A normal person doesn't have the money to just send their wife or their husband to this thing for a month or two to get over their lung infection by spraying them with a hose. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, I must take a drug because I don't have the option. I don't have the option of taking time off. I don't have the disposable income. Best we can do is Coca-Cola when it was legit, and a bottle of pills.
A lot of these places were privately donated. They were donations, so they were coming from church donations.
The sanatoriums.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I thought we were talking about the like.
I mean, I know there was people that paid.
I thought you were talking about the Coca-Cola with cocaine in it and the drugs.
Drugs are bad.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that like there's always these like horror stories in the kind of Wild West of like the kind of medicine shows and the traveling kind of circuses that would sell all these different types of tonics. And a lot of them were
snake oil.
Either snake oil or just opium. A lot of the kind of tinctures that there were the kind of housewives of the 1800s of the 19th century there that were just kind of addicted to tonic. And what was in the tonic, it was opium and things like that. So there were problems in medicine that I think made people want these reforms.
Yeah.
And thank God, 100 years ago, we dealt with the opioid crisis. And in the 90s into the thousands, that was just something completely different. Anyway, I'm just saying that, right, that, yeah, back in like, 120 years ago, there was this sweeping reforms and it was designed to kind of clean up medicine. And you got these kind of traveling salesmen selling, essentially hydrocodone kind of the day, like cough syrup type stuff, but labeling it as whatever tonic. And like, you're going to sleep great tonight. It's like, I bet you will. And then we cleaned up medicine and all this stuff. We solved it. We got rid of all the undesirable and non-conforming medical practices. And it was this desire for safety and greater government control. And then here we are a generation later, and it's like the opioid crisis is far worse than we could even imagine. Medicines now costs a fortune.
Maybe just send me out and spray me with the hose.
We can do that.
Modern medicine has achieved incredible success in certain areas, especially emergency care, although I just hear the most horrific stories about people hanging out in the emergency department. Surgery, trauma medicine, infectious disease treatment. Unless it's Lyme, then they don't know what to do. And then the health landscape has changed. Too many patients struggle with chronic conditions such as autoimmune disease, metabolic syndrome, chronic fatigue, digestive disorders, hormonal imbalance. And these conditions often involve multi-systems interacting with each other over time. So that purely symptom-based approach will struggle to address those complex issues. They just don't have the ability to think outside of the box unless it's I'm in a trauma situation. Like it's just, well, I don't know, go talk to your primary care, but then your primary care doesn't even have an idea what to do about it.
One of the things that you mentioned, so we had like, what was that report you mentioned?
The Flexner Report.
The Flexner Report. So in 1910, you have the Flexner Report, et cetera. And then culturally, we have two world wars.
Yep.
And incidentally, like also the Spanish flu, which apparently a lot of the deaths of the Spanish flu were actually due to doctors overprescribing Tylenol. Was it Tylenol? Or
I think it was Tylenol or aspirin.
Yeah, antipyretic, over-the-counter antipyretics.
And like overdosing them.
And
they are going into liver failure.
And then they're, having, was it liver or kidneys?
Well, if it was kidneys, it was aspirin.
There you go.
Tylenol, it was the liver.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. There was also a subgroup where they tested an experimental vaccine during the Spanish flu that killed a bunch of people as well and gave them the Spanish flu.
That's pretty cool. So, but what I'm saying is that, so you get World War I and you get World War II right after this Flexner Report. And then we have the Federal Reserve basically 10xing the national debt in, 1913 or 14, and bringing all this money in and then converting the United States from a largely agrarian kind of pastoral type society into this industrial giant, putting out like the war machine to go take on the world, and then right into the Cold War. Anyway, all of this has essentially led us to the monster that we have now that we call America, where before it was like there was no income tax and we were just a bunch of farmers hanging out. I know, right? Yeah. No income tax. Up in like, you go back to pre-1900.
They're like getting like straight off your land.
Yeah. Well, but that also led to monocrops and everything, because basically we had we didn't have to. The entire U.S. economy was essentially hijacked for the purpose of fighting Germany, or then leading up to like a war with Russia that didn't really happen.
But from that sprouted very good emergency care,
because
and everything fell from wartime medicine.
Yes, that was the point. Sorry, you get me going on it. And it's just like when you look at everything that our society is shaped by, this is the water that we swim in, and so it's easy to not notice it. But everything, as far as our like ridiculously high inflation, high taxes, high cost of everything, insurance, all of that, it kind of comes out of everything that happened right around the beginning of the 20th century. And one of the big things that would impinge on medicine is, we don't care about your homeopathy. We need to go treat gunshot wounds and landmine wounds and people that have these horrific mechanized warfare injury from machine gun fire.
Yeah, and we started to use IV therapy at that point, which is something we use very readily in our practice now, which we're grateful for. So it's not all bad. It's just you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like there's also a place for herbs and homeopathy and slow medicine and hydrotherapy. And when we're talking about these more chronic disease cases, those things are very helpful.
I guess a way to think about it would be that natural medicine would be preventative medicine, whereas Western medicine would be reactionary medicine.
Yep, that's true. That's actually,
And so
I've
it's
said
like,
that before. That's really true.
yeah, okay, if you crashed your car, you're probably not going to be thinking about your thyroid.
Well, I mean, we have somebody who needed to go to the hospital that we know and love dearly, right? And so it's like I'm glad the hospital was available to handle a severe infection that needed to be handled, right?
Yeah,
But
and
at
you're
the same time, like,
we're,
could we have done that easier? Like, it wasn't done nicely.
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's also this weird kind of thing where the genie's out of the bottle, the toothpaste is out of the tube, and now we are in this world of chemical exposures, big agriculture, industrial processes, and things like that that wouldn't really exist in a natural space. And so then you're like, great. Do we need Western medicine in a world that it helped create? Does that make sense? I wouldn't need all of this Western medicine if it wasn't for this Western lifestyle.
That's true.
Meaning, I'm having a heart attack right now. I'm not, but okay, but now I've got caffeine, which didn't really exist in most of the planet pre like 200 or 300 years ago. I mean, maybe tea, but like, okay, go before the age of exploration when we had ships taking things all over the world. And it wasn't just, you couldn't just get caffeine at every store in the world, right? Take industrial processed foods and things like that that would make me more likely to have a heart attack to begin with, right? And so what I'm saying is now we're in this thing where I wouldn't be having this disease if it wasn't for the modern world, but now I need to the modern world to heal the disease that it gave me. Like all the screens and everything that's going on, it's like most people didn't really wear glasses because they didn't exist, but it wasn't like a third of the population was blind.
Well, even things like cancer rates, like we're seeing them come up considerably, a lot higher than we've ever seen in the past.
Right.
It, I mean, it's not that they didn't have those back in the 1900s. People got cancer. It just was a lot more, it was rare. It was just more rare.
And you could argue like life expectancy and like stuff like that.
Yeah. Except we're supposed to be living to at least 120.
Like yeah, we're pulling like Moses here.
Moses was like 300 or something.
Does he? I don't know. I don't think he lived that long.
He was old.
I thought he was 120 or something.
I don't know. Let's look it up later.
Okay, we will.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to say. I think I
Okay.
just needed to give an overview of the history of natural medicine. Like, it used to be so much more popular and accepted pre 1900s.
You're making a statement that oil money pushed oil money, world wars, and industrial and economic factors pushed natural medicine out of its place as a respected and primary means of healthcare in the country. And then that would lead someone to ask, was that for the best? And was that because it's just like, well, obviously these oil billionaires just had our best interest in mind and they just great. We're now better off now that this stuff got pushed out. Please ignore the fact that those oil interests had a financial interest in our current healthcare system.
Yeah, look the other way. Nothing to see here.
Right. And implying that, well, maybe that was done out of financial reasons and bias and things like that due to financial conflict of interest.
Correct. And we were already seeing more integration and things like having more access, like African Americans had more access to getting education back then. Women had more education back then. To make that comment, it's like we could have seen the rise of multiple populations getting the help they needed because it's good to work within your community and work with people that you know,
And
right?
by that, what you're saying is that
It put us back.
well, what you're saying is that this was sold to the U.S. populace as a pro-social kind of act. Like we're gonna raise the standard in medicine, we're gonna protect people, and we're gonna raise the quality level and increase access and availability of healthcare and the quality of healthcare. But what really happened is that groups that may not have as much money or financial resources got pushed out, and that actually, far from being pro social, it was kind of against helping groups that may not have as much money or opportunity.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good summary.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also it isn't actually what the main population wanted anyway. It was just sort of pushed onto them because most people actually did want the natural therapies over the allopathic care. But then the availability of those natural therapies became limited
I don't think anybody really wanted the system that we got.
in so many ways, right?
But we've all like, it's funny though. It's like the devil uses coercion, but at some point you got to sign the deal in some way. Like we were talking about, the sanatorium's going to take a month, but hey, take this bottle of pills and you'll get it done in like 5 days. And so it's like collectively as a society, we've chosen the quick answer more than the long answer. And even if everybody didn't make that choice, enough of us have made those choices of taking the easy way out that we're here now.
And then, of course, we talked about this in the book of the downhill, the short term issues with taking antibiotics, as for an example, and the long term issues with doing it. Although people needed to do it and it saved lives and it saved people from infection, and we want to use it when we need to use it. However, that increased rates of these other things. And
Well,
so it's like, did that quick fix actually then lead to the problems that we're trying to deal with now that we're having to go back to the old stuff to deal with?
yeah, I think what you're referencing is there was a study that came out that the loss of biodiversity resulting from taking antibiotics caused a decrease in average life expectancy.
Yes, there was several studies. This was actually one of the things we got banned off of YouTube for, so we can't say it very specifically, but it's in our book.
Oh, we're talking about the Big Sur.
The Big Sur. Yeah. And
It's down in California. It's
yeah, the Big Sur. It's
yeah,
great. It's a good drive.
yeah. Watch out for landslides,
Yeah, there's
apparently.
landslides there. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Big Sur, that actually many people who long term they followed them and showed a higher propensity for the development of tumors and all sorts of things. And maybe that's why we're seeing an increase on some level, these petroleum based medications.
Nice.
Although
But that's what I mean. It's
we
almost like
don't know.
it's like we're in a mafia protection racket.
Mhm.
I'm getting like I got this disease or this process because of this lifestyle and microplastics and radiation and my phone and like everything else and junk food, and now I need to go to this mafia don to get the cure for the disease that is a result of the lifestyle that they created.
And anybody who has another thing to help with that thing will be silenced, killed, driven out of the country, which is a whole other history around that particular thing. And it's quite frankly very scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess in that sense, I think what happened was in this kind of internet age and around COVID, there were a lot of people that were like, well, wait a minute, why are we discharging people from the hospital when their O2 sats are in the 70s? And it's just like, well, that's going to kill them. And it's just like, this is COVID. It's different. Get them out of here. Send them away, kind of thing. Don't they need home health oxygen? And they're like, no, just send them away. It's COVID. It's different. And then sure enough, the person dies.
And then they have all these deaths. It's weird. So many people
Yeah.
died, but I don't know how.
Well, what I'm getting at though is that as you kind of like look through it, it's just like COVID wasn't really, and how medicine and society and the government and everybody responded to COVID. There was a lot of us, I think, that just kind of became aware of the medical industrial complex kind of playbook, but you'd be naive to think that that was a unique experience. It's just like, no, that's not unique. This is the play. This is the move.
This is the move. I like
Yeah.
the mafia Don. It's so true.
Yeah.
Go talk to the Don about that.
Yeah. Well,
There's no, it's a big system. It's like, oh, well, I can't take your IV out. You've got to have the nurse on call talk to the doctor to give you an IV. It's just like it's such a system, but it is so bulky, you can't actually get anything done quickly. So what's supposed to be, yes, we are the top for emergency care. It's like you're the top for redundancy and bureaucratic bulk. And these patients aren't actually getting what they need efficiently at all.
yeah, well, that's a longer conversation. I don't know if we have time for it today, but yes, there is a way that we need some kind of a standard of care
Mm-hmm.
because there's some things that are like, listen, we've decided this isn't it as an entire society. We're not going to do this treatment.
We're not doing arsenic.
Nice.
What is it? They used to do bloodletting and arsenic. I mean,
There's some weird narrow cases where you will actually still see bloodletting.
Yeah, and they'll use leeches and stuff.
Yeah. So there's some narrow, but yeah, heroic medicine is largely like been supplanted, I would say. No, but the point is, we are at this point where, yeah, the bloat and inefficiency of the hospital system is due for a revolution, and even those core competencies are being challenged.
Well, and then just the selection and how the training is taking place now throughout the medical programs and through the training programs, the standard is just not as high as it used to be. Let's be honest. It's just not. It's not producing because it's
I would say in some
filtering.
ways the standards are higher.
It's filtering for a very compliant individual.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They
That's
have a
what
lot
I'm
more
saying.
standard for like, no, you really got to toe the
You
line.
gotta really toe the line.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a better way to put it. Yeah. It's like it's not narrowing. It's like we want the best and brightest
Rule follower.
And no, I was actually going the other side. It's like what we would think the physician would be or the nurse would be.
Society. The patient population wants the smartest doctor
that can think outside the box, that's
creative,
that
driven, motivated, empathetic, right?
And that isn't
altruistically motivated.
Yeah, good moral compass.
Right. High ethics.
Yeah. But what we have is
a system that's increasingly selecting for compliance
and protocol-based
like
thinking,
you will jump through these hoops or you're out.
Group thinking.
Yeah.
Plug this in, follow the line, toe the line.
Money, finance.
Financially incentivized. Well, I got to stay at Kaiser because they give a good pension plan now. I've got to stay at Kaiser because Kaiser is innovative and challenging me.
You know how over the years cops have gotten a bad rap for quotas? Like the police department. There's some of the local, our local, we live in the woods, but we're near a small town. And I've noticed that they don't really seem to have a blatant kind of quota system where it's like, I grew up in a small town and it's like, they'd pull you over for going 24 and a 25 and just get you. And it was just they got to write this many tickets or it's curtains and they're going to get fired as a police officer. And I've noticed that our town that we live near doesn't really do that. And it's actually kind of nice. Here and there, there was somebody that was doing burnouts in front of the school or something like that. And it's like, I saw him get pulled over.
And he deserved it.
I prayed that, it's like mercy and justice. I've been that teen, that young driver that was ready to go. Yeah. So it's like, I can't throw him under the bus. At the same time, what I'm saying though, is that in medicine, it's become kind of a quota system as well.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say? Where it's like
a certain number of prescriptions given out. We don't want to run those tests.
Get some more insurance codes on there.
Insurance won't cover those tests, even if it would give us the information that we would want. Even if they know the tests, doctors do not know how to interpret labs. It's crazy. It's crazy. They don't know how to look at patterns.
Well, technically, narrowly, they would legally be allowed to interpret labs, and whatever they say is the interpretation of that lab. Yeah. I think what you're driving at is that they are so narrowly focused, and that basically the insurance kind of model has put these blinders on them.
They're like horse blinders of insurance. Yeah. Well, I can't code for that, so therefore I can't find it.
But at the same time, they're incentivized and pushed to hit their quota for all of these insurance codes to get the hospital the most amount of money. And that if they don't, in some ways, they would get penalized.
And they don't even know it. They're in the system and they kind of know it because they're miserable. And if they've been working there for more than, say, 5 years, they are feeling frustrated because they've been sold a bill of goods that they're actually helping people, but nobody's actually getting better. But they don't know it.
I mean, narrowly, I'd say there's people getting better. Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that that quota system, it undermines trust and the relationship between the public and that institution. When you just kind of feel like you're not pulling me over because of something that's unsafe or a violation of the law. It's just you're just trying to get somebody. You're trying to get somebody. And I think in medicine, there's this growing sense from the patient population, from the public, that's just you're not really here to really help me. You're just trying to hit your quota, and this is going to cost me thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and sometimes people are waiting months to see these doctors to get some sort of answer and some sort of help, and they're just like, "Well, I don't know, just try this, and if it doesn't work, come back." "All right, well, I'll see you in another 3 months," because they can't get back in.
And it's the same thing
And
that
it's the
kind
same
of
thing.
Google
You
could have
could have
just
looked up
just
on Google. No wonder they're worried an AI robot's gonna take over medicine. It's going to, because
well, if that's the level
if
of
that's the
medicine,
level of
that's
medicine that you're practicing,
here, take some Prilosec,
it's
call
like
me. That's pretty weak.
it's really
It's
weak,
pretty
and it's a waste of intelligence, honestly. It's a waste of somebody who is dedicated to going to school for 8 years of their life, you
I think
know?
that deep down, though, there is this sense that the doctors and nurses in the hospital system, like, you know it. You know it.
But they like that sweet paycheck. They really do. The system,
But this is what I mean. We're on this
they're
100-year,
yep, they're in this.
120-year trajectory where it's like, okay, if they were to step out of that hospital system and it's like, okay, you're a nurse, well, it's just like, well, guess what? Like, kind of like your sanatorium. It's like, that doesn't pay as much.
It doesn't
Take
pay
your
as much.
pay, cut it in half, and then pray that you get that much. I mean, I guess, like, what's the cost of our souls?
Yeah, it's it's just a yeah, it is a moral question. And here's the deal, it wouldn't have had to be that much. Most people paid out of pocket to go see the family doctor back in the day. "Oh, you broke
Yeah.
your arm, doc so and so is gonna come to the house and get it all casted up. Here you
Yeah,
go."
just don't old yeller me.
For those of you who don't know,
Well, wait a minute. I don't know if he's
oh,
yeah.
look it up on the internet, Old
Yeah,
Yeller.
Old
Okay.
Yeller. It didn't
Old
go well
Yeller.
for him. He was a
Didn't go
nice dog,
well. He
though.
was a sweet dog until he wasn't.
Ooh,
Till he wasn't. Okay, so reflection. The
mirror.
history of medicine is not simply a story of progress or decline, but it's shaped by scientific discovery and economic forces and institutional powers and cultural priorities. So, understanding that history helps explain why certain approaches to healing became dominant while others were marginalized. Medicine, it's not necessarily, it didn't lose its intelligence or its compassion, but over time it became increasingly specialized and fragmented, for sure. To truly understand complex health problems, we often need to reconnect with the idea that the body is a coordinated system designed to function in harmony. We have some great podcasts on that somewhere in the we did one on the terrain way, which really detailed how we approach it. But understanding how medicine evolved historically leads to an important question. If the system has these limitations, why do so many patients with chronic illnesses still struggle to find answers? In the next episode, what we're going to explore is why your doctor may not be able to solve your case and what questions patients and practitioners should start asking instead. So, we're going to give you some practical questions that you should be asking, which is a deeper discussion on the way that we do things, which I think is important, and bringing back what's great from conventional medicine, what's awesome from the past, and how to marry the two to create a way of thinking that actually gets solutions for people.
Yeah, for as much as we want to complain about 21st century living, it's just like, I mean, the woods is still there. We just kind of go outside and just walk away from our cell phones and our vehicles. It's like,
But technology is allowing us to have this conversation right
yeah,
now,
there's
right?
some cool things.
And so there's some really cool things, and
Yeah,
how do we honor what our bodies need, what our spirits need, but at the same time, we have this world that we live in that we have to overcome things. So
nice.
there we go. Okay, well, that's a wrap. This is episode 43. We will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks.